Maya had always loved music. Even though she couldn't see the world around her, she could feel the rhythm in everything. From the rustling of leaves to the hum of a passing car, everything had a rhythm to it. But the piano was her true love. She'd been playing since she was a little girl. Her fingers would glide over the keys, not just playing notes, but feeling the music in a way no one else seemed to understand. Maya was blind. She had been since birth. Her world was one of darkness, but she never let that stop her. Music, though, gave her light. It was the only thing that allowed her to feel a connection to the world. But there were people who didn't understand that. People who thought that because she couldn't see, she couldn't truly appreciate the beauty of music. One evening, Maya's mother took her to a concert. It was at a grand hall with huge, glittering chandeliers and velvet seats. The event was one of those once-in-a-lifetime kind of moments. The guest of honor was Victor Harrison, a famous pianist known for his exceptional skill and his equally big ego. He was a man whose name was on every billboard, whose concerts were sold out within hours. He was the kind of musician everyone admired, even if they didn't really understand what made him great. His skill, his charisma, it all made him untouchable. But Maya wasn't interested in his fame. She just wanted to hear the music. When they arrived, the place was buzzing with excitement. People were chatting, waiting eagerly for the concert to begin. Maya's mother guided her to their seats, and Maya could feel the weight of the moment. She could sense the power of the music that was about to fill the room. But there was something else, too. A sense of unease. It wasn't long before Victor Harrison appeared on stage, confidently walking to the piano. He looked every bit the part of a celebrity, his tailored suit, his perfect posture, and the smug look on his face. He had no idea who Maya was, but as soon as he saw her in the crowd, something inside him seemed to click. Victor, ever the entertainer, noticed the blind girl in the front row. It was almost as if he'd spotted an opportunity to make the evening more interesting. With a sly grin, he began to speak to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "it seems we have a special guest tonight, a young lady who has come to hear the music without the gift of sight. But perhaps she will understand the beauty of my music just the same, won't she?" His words were light-hearted, but there was a sharpness to them that stung. Maya's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She could feel the eyes of the crowd on her, even though she couldn't see them. She wanted to shrink into her chair, to disappear. But she held her head high. She wasn't going to let Victor's mockery affect her. After all, she had been through much worse in her life. People like him, people who assumed that just because she was blind she couldn't possibly understand music, had been around her all her life. But that didn't mean they were right. The mockery didn't end there. As Victor began to play, he made sure to keep glancing at Maya, as if to remind her that she wasn't supposed to understand the true depth of his genius. His fingers danced across the keys, each note more arrogant than the last. The audience was captivated by his skill, but Maya was no longer listening to the music. She was too focused on the bitter taste of the words he had thrown at her. She had wanted to experience the music, to lose herself in it, but now all she could feel was the sting of his mockery. When the performance ended, the audience erupted into applause. Maya felt the vibrations of their clapping, but she didn't join in. She didn't feel like celebrating. She didn't feel like honoring the musician who had made her the target of his cruel words. As the crowd stood and cheered, she sat still, hands in her lap. Her mother noticed the change in her daughter's demeanor and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Don't let them get to you, Maya," she whispered. "You know your worth." But Maya wasn't sure. She had always been so certain of her music, of the way she could connect to it even though she couldn't see it. But now, in that room under the spotlight of mockery, she questioned herself for the first time. Could she really understand music in the way that others did? Could she truly appreciate its beauty, even though her world was blind? As they left the concert hall, Maya walked slowly beside her mother. The laughter and chatter of the crowd seemed to fade away, and all that remained was the thumping of her heart. She tried to shake off the feeling, to tell herself that Victor Harrison's words didn't matter, that he didn't know her, didn't understand what music meant to her. But no matter how hard she tried, they lingered. The next day, as she sat at the piano in the quiet of her home, Maya ran her fingers over the keys. She could still hear Victor's words echoing in her mind. She knew she could play the piano well, better than most people, in fact. But that wasn't what bothered her. What bothered her was the way he had made her feel, the way he had made her feel like an outsider in her own world. But Maya wasn't one to back down. She didn't let fear or doubt control her. She had a gift, something that could never be taken away from her. And one day she would show the world what she could do. Not to prove anyone wrong, but because her music mattered. Because in a world that tried to tell her she was nothing, she knew she had something no one else could take away. Victor Harrison might have mocked her, but he didn't know the truth. He didn't know what was coming. Maya would show him, and everyone else, that true talent wasn't about sight or status. It was about heart, and she had more than enough heart to change the world. As she began to play, the sound of the piano filled the room, and Maya felt a spark of determination ignite within her. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The following evening, Maya was invited to attend a local music event, though she wasn't sure what to expect. Her mother had signed her up without much fanfare, simply hoping it would be a good experience. Maya didn't really care about being in the spotlight. After the concert, she had spent the entire night thinking about what Victor had said and the way it had made her feel. But now, she was determined to let go of that sting and simply do what she loved: play the piano. The event was held at a small community center, far different from the grandeur of the concert hall the night before. It wasn't as fancy or filled with influential people, but there was something special about it. It felt more personal, as if the music was the only thing that mattered. The audience was smaller, and the mood was relaxed, almost inviting. When they arrived, Maya could hear the low hum of conversation, the soft shuffle of footsteps on the polished wooden floor. She was led to the piano by her mother, and Maya could sense the quiet murmurs around her. People whispered as they took their seats. Maya could feel the eyes of the crowd, but she wasn't afraid. She'd been under the spotlight before, though it had been much different than this. Victor Harrison's words still echoed in her mind, but she wasn't about to let that stop her. She wanted to play, not to prove anyone wrong, but because the music was her voice, the one way she could show the world who she was. Music wasn't about perfection. It was about connection, about feeling the depths of emotions and sharing that feeling with others. As the event began, people took turns performing. Some sang, others played instruments, and a few even recited poetry. But Maya remained focused on one thing: the piano. She waited her turn, listening to the other performances with a quiet appreciation. But in her mind, she was already at the piano, her fingers poised to dance across the keys. When it was her turn, a hush fell over the crowd. They weren't sure what to expect. A blind girl at a music event? Was this some kind of joke? They whispered to one another, exchanging uncertain glances. But none of that mattered to Maya. She didn't need anyone's approval. She just needed to play. Maya's fingers gently touched the keys. Her body relaxed, her senses alert. She could feel the familiar presence of the piano in front of her, and as she began to play, her world disappeared. It was just her and the music. The audience, unsure at first, began to listen. The notes flowed like a river, each one cascading into the next, building and swelling with emotion. It wasn't perfect. She didn't care about perfection, but it was hers, and that was enough. The melody Maya played was a mixture of tenderness and power, a reflection of her inner strength. She played not just the piano, but the very essence of her soul. She didn't care about what anyone thought of her. She was free, letting the music carry her into a place where only she could go. As her fingers moved with the rhythm, she could feel the change in the atmosphere. The tension in the room began to ease. The audience, once doubtful, started to sit up straighter, their attention fully focused on the blind girl at the piano. They couldn't see the beauty of her music the way they might have if they had been watching her perform, but they could feel it. And that was enough. Maya didn't look at anyone. She didn't need to. She was no longer concerned with the whispers or the mocking from before. All she could hear was the piano. It was her heart speaking, her emotions flowing through every note. She played with everything she had, pouring all of her feelings into the keys. It wasn't just a song, it was a story, a journey, a revelation. The more she played, the more the crowd began to lean in, as if they were drawn in by an invisible force. They were mesmerized, captivated by the raw emotion in the music. Even those who had once whispered and doubted her were now silent, lost, in the moment. Victor Harrison, who had arrived late and was sitting at the back of the room, watched from his seat. At first he had been dismissive, thinking it would be just another performance from someone who didn't understand the intricacies of music. But now, as he listened, something in him shifted. The blind girl was playing with something he hadn't expected, something he could never replicate. There was a rawness to her playing, a depth he hadn't anticipated. He wasn't sure why, but he was struck by the fact that Maya's music was not just about the notes. It was about the emotions that flowed beneath the surface. It was music that came from a place of genuine feeling, not from technical mastery or showmanship. And that, Victor realized, was something far more powerful than anything he had ever experienced. As Maya's performance came to an end, there was a moment of complete silence. The crowd was still processing what had just happened, and then, as if they had been waiting for the permission to do so, they erupted into applause. Maya didn't hear it at first, but then her mother gently squeezed her hand, and Maya knew. She knew what they were feeling. It wasn't just a polite clap, it was genuine admiration. For the first time in a long time, Maya felt seen. She felt understood. The applause continued, and Maya smiled to herself, a soft smile of quiet satisfaction. She had done it. She had played from her heart, and in return, the world had listened. The doubts, the mockery, the doubts that had followed her for so long, they were nothing now. She was more than the world had ever given her credit for. And the music? It had spoken louder than anything else. Victor sat back in his chair, his hands resting on his knees. He was still processing the performance, his mind whirling with thoughts. Maya had proven something to him, something he hadn't been willing to admit before. Music wasn't just about showing off skill or being technically perfect. It was about connecting with the audience, about making them feel something they hadn't expected to feel. And in that moment, Maya had done just that. She wasn't done, yet, not by a long shot. This was only the beginning. Maya's performance had left the crowd in awe, but the ripples of her music spread far beyond that small room. The evening didn't end with her alone at the piano. Instead, it marked the beginning of something larger, something that would soon captivate the world. Maya didn't know it yet, but she had just set the stage for a journey that would not only change her life, but challenge the way people thought about talent, perseverance, and perception. The night after the performance, Maya sat quietly at home, her fingers grazing the keys of the piano, replaying the song she had just performed. She wasn't sure what had happened in that moment. It had been more than just playing the right notes. It had been something deeper, a kind of magic that had come alive in her fingertips. The music, the connection to the crowd, the quiet, yet powerful recognition. It had felt like an awakening. Her phone rang, breaking her thoughts. It was her mother's voice on the other end, her words full of excitement. "Maya, honey, you won't believe this. Your performance, it's everywhere. People are talking about it, sharing it, and even the news outlets are picking it up." Maya's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, confused. "You've become a sensation overnight. Everyone wants to know about the blind pianist who stunned the world. You've gone viral. Even Victor Harrison mentioned you in an interview. He said, well, He said you're something special. Maya was stunned. The idea that anyone outside of her small circle would be paying attention to her was beyond her understanding. Victor? She asked, a little incredulously. The same Victor Harrison who mocked me? Her mother laughed softly. Yes, darling. He mentioned you, Maya. He said your music had a depth to it that he couldn't ignore, and he even invited you to perform at his next concert. Maya put the phone down for a moment, absorbing the whirlwind of information. She had always known her music was special, but hearing it acknowledged by someone like Victor, someone with such a massive reputation, felt surreal. It felt like an affirmation, but it also felt like an opportunity that could take her far beyond anything she had ever imagined. The next few days passed in a blur of phone calls, messages, and interviews. Maya couldn't believe the attention she was receiving. Videos of her performance were circulating on social media, garnering millions of views. People from all corners of the world were commenting, praising her for her incredible talent. She had become a symbol of resilience, of the power of inner strength. And then, as if it had been written in the stars, Victor Harrison himself reached out with an invitation to join him for his next big performance in New York. The invitation was overwhelming. A part of her wanted to jump at the chance, to prove to the world what she was capable of. But another part of her, the part that had been mocked, questioned if she was truly ready. Could she stand on that stage in front of thousands and play her heart out? Could she face Victor again, now that he had seen her for who she truly was? Maya's mother could see the uncertainty in her eyes. You've already proven what you can do, Maya. The world is seeing you for who you are. You have nothing left to prove. Just play from your heart, like you always do. Victor's words echoed in Maya's mind. She had never thought she would be the one to make him realize something he had never seen before. The true meaning of music, beyond the notes, beyond the fame, beyond the surface-level brilliance. She had shown him that talent wasn't about who you were or what you had. It was about the depth of your connection to the music. A few weeks later, Maya found herself standing backstage at the grand New York venue, feeling the overwhelming hum of the crowd on the other side of the curtain. She could hear their excitement, their whispers, their anticipation. It felt like something monumental was about to happen, and she was at the center of it. This wasn't just about playing the piano anymore. It was about something bigger. It was about showing the world that talent had no boundaries, no limitations. As she took her place on stage, her hands trembling slightly, Maya reminded herself why she was here. She wasn't here to get revenge on Victor. She wasn't here to prove anyone wrong. She was here because she loved music, because it was her voice, her way of communicating, her way of existing. When the lights dimmed and the spotlight found her, Maya closed her eyes for a brief moment. The silence that hung in the air was palpable, and in that silence, she could hear the heartbeat of the entire room, the audience waiting, watching. She could feel their expectations, their curiosity. But what Maya had realized was that none of that mattered. It wasn't about them. It wasn't about Victor. It was about the music. Her fingers touched the keys, and the sound that erupted from the piano was nothing short of magical. It wasn't just the precision of her playing. It was the raw emotion that poured from every note, the very essence of her soul. As her music began to flow, the crowd grew still, drawn in by the intensity of what she was sharing. It was the kind of music that didn't just fill a room, it filled hearts. For the first time, Maya allowed herself to embrace the spotlight, not with shame or fear, but with pride. She wasn't just the blind girl at the piano anymore. She was Maya, the pianist who could make the world feel something deeper than they ever expected. Victor, who had been watching from the side, was stunned. As the music continued, he couldn't help but feel a mixture of awe and humility. Maya had taken everything he had once known about music and shattered it. What she played wasn't about technique or accolades. It was about something far more powerful, the raw, unfiltered emotion that only someone like her could convey. As the last note lingered in the air, Maya felt the room hold its breath. And then, just like that, the silence broke into thunderous applause. The audience rose to their feet, their cheers echoing through the hall. But it wasn't just applause. It was a recognition, a realization. Maya had shown them something they hadn't seen before, a new way of understanding music, of connecting with it, of experiencing it. And in that moment, Maya knew that this was just the beginning. The world hadn't expected it. But now that Maya had stepped into the spotlight, there was no turning back. The performance in New York had gone viral in ways no one had imagined. News outlets from across the globe were reporting on the blind pianist who had captivated the world with her raw, emotional playing. People everywhere were talking about her. It was as if the entire planet had collectively decided that Maya's music was a force to be reckoned with. But fame was a strange thing. It came with a mixture of adoration and scrutiny, of love and doubt. Maya had never wanted this kind of attention. She hadn't played to become famous, to have people recognize her name. She had played because the music was the only way she knew how to express herself, to show her soul to the world. Now the world was taking notice, and she wasn't sure how to feel about it. Her life, once filled with quiet moments at the piano and the company of her family, had become a whirlwind. Invitations flooded in, offers to perform, interviews with major television networks, articles written about her background and her extraordinary talent. The very same people who had once doubted her were now singing her praises, and Maya didn't know how to navigate it all. Victor Harrison, who had initially mocked her, now saw something entirely different. He had become one of her biggest supporters. Maya was invited to perform with him at prestigious events, to appear in interviews by his side. His public apology came as a surprise, though it felt sincere. He confessed that he had been wrong to judge her, admitting that her music had shown him a side of the art he had never fully understood. But even with all the public support, Maya couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. It was as if she were living in someone else's story, someone else's idea of who she was meant to be. One evening, Maya sat in her dressing room, preparing for yet another performance. The bright lights around her mirror reflected her image back at her, but it didn't feel like her. The girl staring back at her seemed foreign, almost like a character in a story she had never written. She was exhausted, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. There was a pressure now, a weight that had settled on her shoulders. The world expected her to be something extraordinary, something they could look up to, something that inspired them. But Maya was just a girl who loved music, and in all the noise of fame and praise, she was starting to lose sight of that. Her manager knocked on the door, interrupting her thoughts. "Maya, they're waiting for you," he said, his tone upbeat but with an edge of urgency. "You've got to get out there. The audience is expecting you." Maya nodded, forcing a smile. "Give me a minute," she said. As her manager left, Maya closed, her eyes taking a deep breath. This was what she had always wanted, wasn't it? To be recognized for her music, to make a difference, to show the world that she wasn't just a blind girl at a piano. She was so much more than that. But now that she had the world's attention, she wasn't sure she could live up to the expectations that came with it. It was time to go on stage. Maya stood, straightening her dress and walking toward the door. But just before she stepped out into the spotlight, she paused. She placed her hand on her chest, taking a moment to center herself. She thought about the long journey that had led her to this moment. It had been filled with challenges, with doubts, with mockery. But it had also been filled with triumph, with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that her music was powerful enough to make people listen. The applause outside the door was deafening, but Maya didn't rush. She took a moment to embrace the silence before she walked out, a soft smile playing on her lips. She wasn't going to let the pressure control her. She wasn't going to let the world define her. This was her moment. She was the one in control, now. As she stepped onto the stage, the world seemed to vanish. The audience faded into the background, and all that mattered was the piano in front of her. The bright lights didn't blind her. They simply illuminated the space where she felt most at home. She could hear the subtle hum of the piano, feel the coolness of the keys beneath her fingers. When she began to play, it wasn't for the applause. It wasn't for the cameras or the expectations of the world. It was for her. She let the music flow from her fingertips, the way it had always done in the quiet of her home, when no one was listening except for her. The notes came to life, vibrant, and filled with emotion. The audience was silent, drawn in by the pure sincerity of her playing. Maya was no longer the blind girl playing for an audience that didn't understand her. She was simply a woman expressing the deepest part of herself through her music, and as she played, she realized something. She didn't need the world to validate her. She didn't need the approval of those who had once mocked her. She had already proved herself to herself. She had already shown the world that talent wasn't about sight or status. It was about heart, and her heart had always known the way. When the last note rang out, the audience rose to their feet, applauding her with a thunderous cheer. But Maya didn't need to hear it. She could feel it in the way the air shifted, in the way the room seemed to vibrate with appreciation. She smiled, taking a bow, but she knew the truth. This wasn't about applause, this was about the music. And in that moment, she had finally found peace with it all. The world, as Maya knew it, was different now. The applause and recognition hadn't faded. In fact, they had only grown louder. But in the midst of it all, she was beginning to understand something that hadn't been clear to her before. Fame was fleeting. The noise would eventually die down. The lights would eventually dim. And what would remain? Her music. That was the one thing no one could take away from her, no matter how much they tried to shape her or her story. Maya's schedule was packed. Every day was filled with rehearsals, performances, and media interviews. She found herself being interviewed by journalists who asked her about her rise to fame, about how she felt being the blind girl who had become a global sensation. At first, she answered their questions with a forced smile, giving them the answers they wanted to hear. But slowly, as the days passed, Maya grew tired of the rehearsed responses. She wasn't just a story they could tell. She wasn't just a headline or a piece of a viral trend. She was a person with a passion for music that went far beyond the fame it had earned her. One afternoon, while Maya was in her dressing room before a concert, she decided to take a step back from the whirlwind that had become her life. She asked her manager for some time away. He was reluctant, but Maya insisted. "I need to find my peace again," she said. "I need to remember why I'm doing this, and it's not for the applause or the attention. It's for the music." Her manager, seeing the exhaustion in her eyes, reluctantly agreed. He understood that Maya wasn't just a performer. She was an artist. And every artist, no matter how successful, needed to rediscover their roots every now and then. Maya decided to visit her childhood home. It was quiet there, far from the spotlight, and it felt like the only place where she could breathe freely. She walked through the familiar rooms, touching the old piano that had once been her only companion. The ivory keys were worn, their surfaces smooth from years of use. She sat down at the piano, running her fingers over the familiar keys. The melody that came from her fingertips was different now. It wasn't the same song she had played before. It wasn't a song for anyone else. It was a song for her. The music flowed from her heart with a kind of purity she hadn't experienced in weeks. As she played, Maya realized that she had been so focused on the world's expectations that she had almost forgotten how to play for herself. The piano, which had always been her sanctuary, had become a source of pressure. The weight of the world's gaze had clouded her vision. But here, in this quiet room, it was just her and the music. There was no pressure, no expectation. There was only the sound of the notes blending together, telling a story that was hers alone. Maya played for hours, losing track of time. She played until the sun began to set, the room filling with the soft glow of twilight. In that moment, she felt something shift inside of her. She remembered why she had started playing the piano in the first place, not to prove anything to anyone, but because the music was a language she could speak without words. It was how she connected with herself and with the world around her. The next day, Maya returned to the concert stage with a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just performing anymore. She wasn't playing to fulfill the world's expectations. She was playing because she loved the music, because it was a part of her that no one could touch. As the lights dimmed and the audience waited, in anticipation, Maya took a deep breath and closed her eyes for a moment. This time, when she touched the keys, there was no fear, no doubt, just music. The audience, sensing the change in her energy, fell silent. They knew something was different. They could feel the depth in her music, the raw emotion that poured from every note. It wasn't just a performance. It was an experience. It was as though Maya had found a new way to communicate, a way to share her soul with the world without words. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Maya didn't need to hear it. She could feel it in the way the air around her seemed to hum with energy. After the concert, as she walked off stage, Victor Harrison was waiting for her backstage. He had been watching her performance from the side, and when he saw her approach, he smiled warmly. "You were incredible tonight," he said. "There's something about your playing now. It's more than just skill. It's real." Maya nodded, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't felt before. "Thank you, Victor," she said softly. "I think I finally understand what you meant when you said music is more than just technique. It's about the heart, and I found mine again." Victor chuckled, a rare moment of humility crossing his face. "I guess I have a lot to learn from you after all." As Maya left the venue that night, she realized something that would stay with her forever. The world could try to shape her into something she wasn't. It could try to tell her what she should be, what kind of artist she should be. But the truth was, she had always known who she was. She had always known what her music meant, and now she was ready to share that truth with the world. She didn't need the approval of anyone else. She didn't need to prove herself. She just needed to play. And that was enough.